Hey everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk About It, the podcast. I'm your girl, Twana Yvonne, but of course you can call me TJ, but TJ Speaks on all social platforms. We're here to talk about all things pop culture, but urban pop culture. But of course, we're HR peeps. So we're going to bring in and sprinkle a little HR on y'all. Sprinkle me, baby. Sprinkle me, baby, right? But before we dive in and talk about it, let me bring in my fantabulous co-host, Ms. Shatema Gresham, the CEO of Procure Talent Management, and also the VP of PD, Professional Development
yes.
of the Black HR Society. I always forget to say that. And so this time I committed to ensuring to introduce her as our Vice President of Professional Development. So all things PDUC, that is Shatema and her team. So welcome in, Shatema. How you doing, girl?
Hey, TJ. Thank you so much for the intro. Once again, I'm Shatema. I'm the CEO of Procure Talent Management Group, Lady Gresham on all the platforms. I am the VP of Professional Development with the fabulous Black HR Society. So I'm excited to be here and get this podcast going.
I'm excited too. Before we dive into our guest, because we got a great guest, and I'm really excited. And I'm also excited you guys have joined us back. But I want to talk to Shatema a little bit because I've noticed she's been out here in these social streets, y'all. Like, Shatema is
Not
so
really.
like, I don't want to go social. I've been like that too. Like, the Black HR Society has really been pushing me for the last 2 years to get out on social, and I'm like slowly making my way. But Miss Gresham has arrived finally, and so I want to talk to her a little bit about what's happening. Why you outside in socials finally? Because I've been begging. And then, a little bit about what's going on with Procure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for noticing.
Yes,
so I appreciate that, but I cannot take credit for those fabulous social media content that's been coming out very regularly. So I partnered with Darren from Procure. He was one of our guests before, and it's actually his fantastic team that is executing on my vision. So we have had multiple conversations. I'm going to use the word reluctant. Podcast, content creator in that space. It's just not my ministry.
I heard her say she still went kicking and screaming, guys. She was
and
still
screaming.
kicking and screaming, but you're there.
Absolutely. So there's going to be new things. It's different when you're paying for something. So I have to, put the time where the money has been invested. And Darren, shout out to him and his Procure team. They have been taking care of that and pushing out all of that great content. I still haven't even liked all of the things that have come out. But I have reviewed it.
Her in these social streets.
It's
She
so
haven't
true.
even liked her own shit. And
I
that's
haven't.
like rule
That
one.
I've paid for. But I am getting better. I am getting better with the content. So we have met. We have a vision of what I want to see. I always say, Leos, we know what we like. We sometimes are not the best at articulating it, but I know what I like. And so his team that he's put together is executing on that vision. And, I told him I reserve the right to change my mind. So we have gone in and made some adjustments. But it is picking up some momentum. And hopefully the fruits of that labor is going to manifest into some deposits in the bank.
Good for you, Shatema. I'm proud of you because we're Gen X. Like, let me be honest with you. Like, we didn't grow up with social. And so when social media was introduced to us, like, people were like, I'm going to the store. I went to pee. I went over here. Like, that was a little bit TMI for me. And, like, I'm a private person. And so that just didn't connect. What I'm learning is there's a difference between a consumer and also an influencer or a brand. And so I started telling Shatema, because first the board started telling me, get on social, TJ, put your brand out there. And it was a struggle, but because we didn't grow up in that social space. But now I'm learning you can be a consumer and influencer, and we being podcasts and having a business, you have to use that as the way to get out and reach your people, right? And so we are used to newspapers and like ads, but that's not the same, because you're going to pay for an ad and hope they read it. Where what I'm learning is if I post something on social and I get 1,000 views, that is huge, right? Yeah. Not necessarily whether they like it or not, but it is definitely giving me access to this space that we didn't necessarily have. And so I've been pushing her to get out there.
It's true.
I've been out there a little bit.
I mean, TJ's been killing it.
Really?
I think, yeah, she's been killing it. I told her that she's definitely in the content creator space. I am not.
Yay.
I think for me, I struggle with, definitely, this Gen X thing. I think it's more personality, and I think, we grew up in HR, so we're used to kind of being behind the scenes.
Yes, private.
So
private.
Putting all that information out, like I'm not posting every family vacation, every dinner I went to, every restaurant I've been in. I'm a little more strategic about what I put out there. I'm still kind of like, nervous about it being in internet land, whatever the hell that is and where that goes. But I have learned, definitely with you planting that seed and now being required, because I'm putting my money out there. It's a necessary kind of evil in the entrepreneur space that we are a brand and people want to connect with you. Yes. And I think of the stuff that I've purchased online, it's because I've connected somehow with either the owner or, whoever that influencer is. And that's actually what led me, those testimonials or, them getting in front of the camera. So it's just an uncomfortable space. I don't enjoy it. I get bored with it. As well.
As a consumer?
I do, because I'm not on social media like that all the time anyway. So
that means she needs to fix her algorithm, guys. She's got it, like, you control your algorithm. So if you're bored, that means the stuff that you're pulling in.
I'm entertained, but I'm not. I feel like I'm entertained when I'm on there, but I'm not like, my kids and my family tell you I'm not on there for hours or time.
That's a good thing. That's healthy.
Yeah,
that would be called doom scrolling.
I may scroll for 30 minutes and then I've moved on, which is, as you know, I miss shit all the time. Like I'm missing my own postings. I miss the likes. I'm not on there. They're like, you got to log in. I'm like, I haven't been on Facebook or Instagram.
But it's okay that you're not on a lot. Otherwise, it would be doom scrolling, right? Yeah. And what I want you to start to consider, because she's saying I'm doing better, and one of the reasons is because I've learned the difference in consumer and an influencer, and I do want to start to brand myself. That's something that was on my prayer board 2-3 years ago, that I am the brand. And in order to be the brand, you do allow people to see who you are, what you do, and they trust you, they believe in you. And so, I'm like, Shatema, like, share, comment, subscribe.
Where is that at?
Where you gotta comment on your own stuff. At first I was like, why am I do that? Like, why would I like my stuff? It's because it is pushing the algorithm out. And so the moment you post, rule 1 is to like and comment on your own. Our guest over here, we ain't brought her in yet, but you're about to introduce us. She knows. And so you want people to see
for sure
the good stuff you're doing. So
I definitely seen an uptick in the last maybe 3 weeks. So if there's anybody struggling in that space of social media who are reluctant to post, check out our podcast with Darren from Procure. He has a fabulous team, and we're super picky about what we like.
We are.
They are able to adjust, and they've been killing it. I literally go in, I look at it, I'm like, that looks good, approve, and it's it goes out.
Yeah.
So
but good for you. And I know you give them the credit, but you, even though you're not creating it personally, you still made the connection. You realized the value in what's there.
And definitely hands-on. I'm conscious of, what I send out as far under that Procure brand. So there's nothing that's posted that I haven't approved. And, he had to pull my teeth with that. I'm like, you sent me what? Email when? Like, let me go look. But now that we're in this cadence and we have a system to look at it, so everything that's gone out, I've seen it. but it's just then logging onto all these different social media platforms and doing my part. So that's what we've been working on.
Carve out that time. One of the trainers that I met with said, listen, if you really want to push your business, you will dedicate at least the first 30 minutes to an hour to your social, because it is your brand, it is your marketing, it is the least expensive, right? Like if you go pay for a marketing company, you're going to spend a lot more money. Our money is our time, or our time is our money, same thing. And so I've been giving that like really honest thought. Like you'll see my realty stuff. I'm trying to be intentional about posting at least one thing a day, because that consistency is what's going to push us. I don't care if people like it, right? Like that's our thing. Like we want it to be perfect. We want it to be pretty. We don't need people to like it and comment necessarily. We need to get in the habit of being consistent about creating the content. And that is the hump I'll say I'm getting over. So thank you, Shatema. I want to know who you introducing us to, girl, as our special guest today.
Absolutely. Well, she's definitely in these social streets, and she's posting good content out. So I have been on LinkedIn a little bit more and have been liking everything that you're pushing out. And kudos to you if you're doing that yourself. I struggled. I'm like,
I don't have the time, so I spend the money.
You know, wealthy people pay for shit that they need to get done. I'm not wealthy, but I'm like, I need to get it done and I can't do it. So we're going to have to figure out where to pull this from.
You're wealthy, because I'm posting my own shit, Sarah. She wealthy as hell.
It's part of a larger strategy. But our guest is in these social streets putting out some great talent and content out there for you. So definitely check her out. Welcome, Miss Sarah Boyd, founder and CEO of Formation, which is the space for Black women to have real talk about working in corporate America and putting a real resource and real community available to them. So welcome to the Let's Talk About It podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that about some of the content I'm putting out, because I do it myself. I think I'm lucky that throughout my career, I wouldn't say that I have a content creation career, but I've spent the past decade of my career doing instructional design, putting together a lot of talent development programs.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, sizing something down for a LinkedIn post, I was like, okay, cool, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person who I DIY everything.
Ooh.
I really do. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I've had a chance to kind of struggle bus it and figure it out a little bit before offloading it to someone. I do definitely want to offload it to someone someday, but I think it's also important to understand how these things are done.
Yeah.
I'm also unnecessarily competitive. And so my niece, who
I love it, unnecessarily
13, you know, like she has a YouTube channel and she knows how to post a TikTok. So I'm like, if she can do it, then
I can do it.
I can do it. Yes.
Yeah.
You're on TikTok then?
Oh, no. No.
Wait.
Don't even get TJ started about
my
TikTok.
toes in there.
Girl, we TikTok live right now. Y'all tap in. Make sure y'all liking the screen.
You're talking about
share.
a cyber bully when it comes
Girl.
to TikTok. She's like, Shatema, did you go on there? I'm like, I don't know if well, it went down. Remember, I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. I'm like, I can't even log on. She's like, you don't have TikTok? No,
You
I never
gotta
made
get
it
out there. Like the social, that's where the money is at, and these kids know it. Like I am so excited to welcome our special guest. Like I feel like I have struck a landmine with Sarah.
She's fantastic.
You know, one, because you know what she just said. Like she gonna go out here. She's competitive. Like we excel. Like we want to be the best in our spaces. And when I met her, like the thing that like it got me excited is I'm facts, not feelings. And she was like, let me tell you about this data, TJ, and these statistics, and this is where it comes from. Because we talk about the Black experience in corporate, and when you try and explain that to a person that's a non-POC, you know, it's tough for them to connect and to relate. And I realized that, and I was sharing that with Sarah, and, you know, she was like, here's all the data and the facts. And that's what I love about Sarah. Because even today, she was like, oh, I did my research on the podcast. She come with facts, not feelings.
And
right?
I think in HR, especially when you're a person of color in HR, we have to bring facts. We can never, even when my gut and my intuition and all of my 20 plus years of experience, like I know that I know, typically we're reporting it up to someone who doesn't look like us. And even if they do, we have to bring the facts, right? And so sometimes it's hard to go find these things that, hey, you've created trauma with this decision or it negatively or adversely, affected the team. And it's like, well, who did you talk to and how many people? And, you're always having to bring this data. So I think, that facts, not feelings in HR is like, I can never go in there and say, I feel anything. I have to be like, this is what happened. This is what happened. And because of that, this is where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such a great strategy, for navigating corporate America as well. And I think that's where I developed it, if I am really honest with myself. I also, leveling up my nerd status a little bit, I did do debate when I was in high school.
Ooh, I love that as a fellow nerd.
Definitely learned the art of bringing in facts, but I think that has helped a lot throughout my career because facts are facts. Yeah. And I do think that there is a space for feeling and being a human being.
Sure, absolutely.
But when people are not creating space for you to be a human being, it is a really great way to not necessarily let your work speak for itself, but to kind of tie it up with a bow and say, oh, well, here's how I've moved the needle. Or, oh, that's so interesting that, that's your perspective. What I've seen is an increase here or a decrease here. Or I think one of my kind of favorite tactics, speaking of facts, not feelings, is in those moments where someone's coming to you and kind of saying, I think that you made so-and-so feel this way, or I think that this, and this, then going into that mode and kind of saying, I'm so glad that you shared your perspective. Do we know for a fact?
Right. That it was
that they feel that way?
Yeah.
Or that it came from this place? Or that is how it went down?
Right.
Because that was not my perspective.
Right.
Well, the moment they say, I think, right? Thinking comes from not knowing. It already is non-fact. And so to your point, let's because our experiences, a lot of people get very emotional first. You can't respond from the emotional space and expect to be effective. All right. Let me say that again. You can't respond from the emotional space and expect to be effective. And so we have to then go back and, like Sarah said, you can be emotional, but let's really focus on what the facts are and then, have the conversation around the facts and not the feeling. So this is good.
Facts, not
and getting people to that space is difficult, right?
Yes.
Because you have to almost let them get through those emotions.
Yep.
Okay, take a deep breath. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what exactly, specifically, happened, or what made you think that? What did they do or say or whatever?
Or what are we solving?
What are we? What are you looking for?
I had brunch with my brother, and he was just adamant about where he stood on something, and I let him, like you said, process all of those emotions. But the moment I reeled him in, it was when I said, I hear you, but those aren't really facts. And I think that I appreciate your feelings, but let's move into the space of facts. And he was like, oh, wait. He then I saw him open up to this different perspective of, dang, I do want to get out of my feelings a little bit and move into facts.
I think it works in reverse too, right? Like we can do that with ourselves as well, because you will drive yourself absolutely insane if you sit and think that something is fact and you don't know that.
Right.
Yes.
Granted, when we look at the facts, they do absolutely paint a certain picture.
Yeah.
But I think it is helpful in certain scenarios where you're kind of trying to give someone the benefit of the doubt, or you're not 100% sure why something happened, to kind of apply that same concept to yourself and be like, okay, here's the facts. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know.
Yeah.
And because I don't know X, Y, and Z, and probably will never, ever get clarity on that, I might just have to set that aside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, this is really interesting. We're talking about this today because I went to a book study on Sunday, and that's exactly what we talked about, right? You have a brother who's doing something, you want to do it, and you go behind him and try and do it, and all the signs are pointing to don't do it, right? But then you assume the signs are created by your brother, and you do something extraneous. In this case, in book study, he killed the brother.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't think I can say that on YouTube. So fix that, Kiara. But
say unalived.
Unalived. I know. Like, I be saying all kind of shit. TikTok. Fix it, Dion. But he unalived him and then found out later that it wasn't the brother. Well, you can't now go back
and fix that.
Right. And so I see people doing that. Like, we make decisions from our feelings that you can't go back and correct. You can't go back and undo. You can then only ask for grace or forgiveness in that situation.
It's funny you brought up family because, Sarah, when you were speaking, I was thinking of just like family in respect of, you all grew up in the same house, but collectively you have different experiences. So I know, like, even with my siblings, which they probably don't want me to say this, but, we can describe an incident that we were all at. And we are all like alpha matter of fact that these are the facts.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, that didn't happen. You know what I mean? You thought you heard, or you thought that, maybe the conversation started at the point that you entered, but actually the conversation or whatever the issue is began before that, right? That rolled in. But everyone collectively have their facts that they believe to be truths, right? And when you look at it at a greater, picture, almost like a movie, right? Pulling back, you realize that, yes, what they're saying is true, but out of context, right? Or out of, displaced, from a larger meaning of something like that. So I feel like sometimes, especially in the workplace, things happen and, they think, well, that was directed towards me. And you're like, from an HR perspective, we always see, we get to see everything. And I'm like, well, actually, that had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
That started the other day with this incident, and you might have overheard it, but it was not in context to where you're connecting it to.
I want to pull a string a little bit, and then I want to really get Sarah's opinion, because I feel like the work she does and the studies, and like, she kind of studies behaviors, right? And so speaking to, everybody's truths or their perspectives are different, right? We speak to your perspective is your truth, right? Yes. And that comes from what you saw, your past experiences, all your feelings. And so when you bring those things together, you may not feel like that is my truth or the truth.
Right.
But it is the truth based on
from your perspective.
Correct.
And
so when you come back into the center, like, how do we then make those things, kind of gel together when we all maybe have different background, cultural experiences? We saw it different. Like, we see it in the Bible, right? One story about the fig tree, and this verse is different,
right?
But it really isn't non-truth. It is their perspective,
a collective experience, for sure.
So, Sarah, tell us.
Oh God,
what's one to do?
Right? How do you bring those perspectives? Like, this happens for us in investigations, right? When we're investigating a work site issue, and your perspective is different than the others, but they're not necessarily non-truths. It's just the words maybe you chose or whatever. How are we supposed to? Now we figure it out.
We definitely
but
it
does become a little bit challenging when you're dealing with perspectives, which now we have to call truths. So.
Yeah, that's where I actually think, kind of going back to our earlier conversation where we were talking about facts, not feelings. I think in that space, especially if you've been conducting an HR investigation and now you're circling back, closing the loop, hopefully trying to create harmony, that is where there should absolutely be space for feeling. There should absolutely be space for both parties to say, here's my perspective of what happened, because I just want you to kind of understand where I was coming from, but I want to hear yours. But we know that rarely happens. I remember in my own experience, after my own HR investigation had been closed, I remember the HR rep who was on that call, instead of kind of creating that space, she said, okay, so we've just deemed and found that your manager is not racist. she's just very unprofessional. We've recognized that there's, elements of her professionalism that need to be worked on. And she did ask, she said, and so what do you need to, feel
we know why we do that.
Feel more at ease
Put the
and more
ownership
comfortable.
on you. Yeah.
Right.
And I said time and consistency. I'm going to consistently need to see her show up in a professional way.
Right. Yep. Good for you.
And that was, me advocating for what I needed in that moment and kind of sharing my perspective of things. Although when, someone says things like, I have Black friends and I've never seen someone like you drink kombucha, we can call it what it is. But, kind of back to creating space for feeling, I really wish that in that moment she had created space for someone else, my manager at the time, to bring in her perspective. Because I think in doing so, we perhaps would have been able to move to a more productive space. But I think people get so uncomfortable in those scenarios that she, as the HR rep, kind of just shut it down. She was like, okay, well, next time just don't sit on things and let them fester.
Well, because they don't know how to deal with the microaggressions. And let me just make sure I heard the 2 microaggressions correctly. They were the kombucha. Can you repeat them again for the audience?
Yes. So the first was I was drinking kombucha one day, and she just laughed out loud and was like, oh my gosh, I have just never seen anyone like you drink kombucha before. That was one.
Like you, right? Okay,
yeah.
That was the first one. And then go into the second one, because we use these as teachable moments. Go into the second one for
and
me.
Then the other one, I don't even remember what led to the comment. I remember we were just kind of setting up a room together, and it might be my memory, but the way I remember it is just seemingly randomly. She's like, I have some Black friends. And I was like, okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
Black kids.
So those are microaggressions, which are what they call insults to, marginalized groups that are not intended to be offensive. And we kind of straddle the fence on the intention line because, when you use a term like someone like you, like you're already making a clear distinction between me and you, me and that person. And if it's something non-offensive, say what that thing is, right? Like, oh, I don't know, Black people drink kombucha, whatever it is, but now you have created what's called an insult, and whether you know it or not, I'm offended. And so that is something that happens in the workplace often.
All the time.
I am working with hopefully an org locally to teach about microaggressions, because what's unfortunate, Sarah, is to your point, like they just say, okay, what do you need to get past it? But there really is healthier ways to identify a microaggression, educate on it, and then ensure this doesn't happen again. Because for the person of color, it makes for a very unhealthy, stressful workplace. And for any employer, you want your people to be happy so they're productive, so that they can come to work and show up, and so that they're not in the HR office talking about, this was an insult to me and now you don't know how to handle it. So I appreciate you, Sarah, for bringing that in, because I think it was something we really needed to talk about.
For sure.
This has been great. Like, we already got to wrap down episode 1. I know. This has been really good. So go ahead, Shatema, and start closing us out, girl.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Sarah, for joining us for part 1 of our 2-part session with us. So definitely tune in for part 2. I am Shatema Gresham. I'm the CEO of Procure Talent Management Group. It's your one-stop HR consulting firm that specializes on talent management. I'm also the VP of Professional Development with Black HR Society. You can check us out on all of the platforms, Procure on all the platforms, and BHRS, the Black HR Society, on all other platforms as well. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Shatema. I am TJ. Again, TJ Speaks on all social platforms. I want to give a shout out to the Black HR Society for making a meaningful difference in the careers of Black HR professionals and also contributing to the community to ensure we get equitable employment. You can find me on all platforms. Again, TJ Speaks. If you want to be a guest or if you know somebody who would make a great guest on the show, email me. TJ at We Want to Talk About It, because we do. We want to talk about it with you. And we're so grateful you checked in with us. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and we'll see you back next time. Be good. Bye-bye.
Bye.